Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. My guest today is Elangovan Shanmugam, a seasoned software professional with over 30 years of experience. Among the multiple roles Elangovan has played are the Distinguished Engineer and Director of Engineering leading strategic AI transformation initiatives in a large organization. In this conversation, Elangovan traces his journey from FoxPro and 4MB RAM days to the current AI engineering practices. He also shares how software evolved from standalone systems to connected business ecosystems. A major theme that has run through his career is that the problem often stays the same, but the solution keeps changing. Elangovan describes AI agents as digital humans that help people interact naturally with systems. He explains that in software patents, the method of solving a problem can be patentable. And he also finally shares his tips for professionals about embracing AI and how one can be evolving continuously and not getting into the comfort zone. Listen on. Hi, Elangovan. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Thanks, Shiv. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we connected, and I thought it is a good opportunity to start from your origin story, how you got associated with IT and what the things that you've been doing, and then we'll kind of take it from there. It'll also give me an update on what you've been up to with all those patent lists behind your name, how those things happen. I've always been very curious. Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good, Shiv. So just a quick background, right? I was saying, kind of think about myself starting from the 4 MB RAM to 20 MB hard disk days to now the cloud. Even now it has gone to space, right? The whole thing, not even in the earth now anymore, it is going to the space. And so saw the whole industry transforming from that days to now. So way back when I was doing my graduation, because I was a physics graduate, right? And so from there, I was fascinated about this new industry called computer science. Though I did not get the course during the time, I did some kind of a quick diploma courses. From there, everything I learned through the job. And it's all about curiosity, it's all about learning in the work. My primary thing is never stop learning. Right? That's my motto. And so you can see I started my career from FoxPro to now AI engineering. So it's vast, changes that happen. We saw from the days to now. So that's my background, and I can talk a little bit about my innovation, how the innovation got into me, the patent and everything else that you called out. I wanted to have more patents than what I have right now. I have right now about 21, and this year I applied for 5. But then I also have a very prestigious award from my founder, who is Scott Cook, 2 times Innovation Award winner. Right in Intuit, it's a very prestigious award. So I'm very privileged to have 2 of them. So
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. So before we get into that, a little bit on when you said you started with FoxPro and 4MB, what were the kind of challenges that you were solving, and how did that change over time?
It's a fascinating question. So if you think about it, way back when I started this, we were working on some other things called bill of material for a manufacturing company. And this was primarily construction company. Yeah, I was in Delhi at the time. And we were trying to solve that with FoxPro, building a standalone desktop application. And at the time, it was called LAN was coming up, the local area network, and it was a little bit more. Hey, there's a server and there's a client, and that started at the time itself. So we were trying to solve that problem, and the construction problem still sticks. Right, and now even now it is there, but it is kind of slightly different from way back to now. Way back we were used to data entry a lot, right? There's a lot of data entry, and we used to even have data entry operators as a job. And now it has transformed from that to in the AI world. Even in recently, we were solving for construction companies in AI. In fact, last year I took a course where I was doing something about the construction, especially remodeling a home or rebuilding a home or a new custom-made homes. How do you use, let's say, VR glasses and visualize this whole thing, and then come up with a project plan, come up with the materials, what is required? It is very different now. The problem still sticks. The solution, right? The way that you approach is different, right? And that is where this evolution of this whole thing happened through the technology.
Yeah. No, I mean, in terms of the scale, when you said you are working for a manufacturing company, it is probably for one organization, one process, stuff like that. And then we also saw the connectedness of an ecosystem for a particular industry. And you started kind of using building blocks from others and putting together a little more complex systems, whether it is ERP or even supply chain integrations and all that. But the moment you talk about internet connected AI, how has the scale changed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So thanks for bringing that up. And so I worked in integration platform for quite a while in Intuit as well as in the previously. The ecosystem is what we call, right? It is not just like one company doing that one job, right? There are companies that are connected. You may want to delegate something to e-commerce in different sites, and inventory in a different sites. The banking connection is different sites, and so we bring in data together to solve the problem holistically. It's not just data entry. Like, so that's why I brought up the data entry aspect of it. Now you can actually connect to the systems that are out there, and you can bring the data automatically, and the data entry is happening through the data integration platforms. And so in fact, in my previous work, before the AI, I built something called integration platform for Intuit, where we brought in data from different companies. For example, banks. We integrated with 20,000 banks because customers have data. Like you said, I used to solve for one company, but now we are solving for millions of customers, not just the consumers, but also the small businesses and mid-market businesses. And now, if you think about those companies, they apparently connect with the minimum 27 different applications.
Wow.
So now you have data spread across multiple platforms. Now, how do you have them cohesively in one place where you can actually do things meaningfully? And so that's what Intuit was solving for at the time. So we were bringing the data from e-commerce websites like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, Shopify, and many more. And banks like 15,000, 20,000 banks differently. In the US, there are so many things that are called financial institutions, not just banks, but also credit unions. There are finance companies and so on. So we bring data from those companies, and we were expanding that integration as we go along. Now with the AI world, now it has become even more easier and possible. Now you just point to a API spec, and it actually creates the integration, right? And I can remember we go back to our when we have the DCOM world, and you or I worked on a project called the Kanchenjunga, right? And so we were automatically generating the OR mapping, object to relation mapping, and it is now is done by one single command, one single prompt in the AI world. Right, we worked on multiple months, multiple quarters of the project. Now it is happening just in days, and that just in hours, in fact, right? And so that integration is so critical for any software product to be successful these days.
So when you integrate, there are all these other side effects that also come up, starting with either supply chain injection or attacks too. How do you keep pace with the evolution of the different subsystems?
Yeah, so that's where the canonical model coming into play. So you have the interface. So there are companies out there. They are not working on a standard-based companies, right? The banking data itself is very different, right? Your checking account will be different from fixed deposit versus different kind of banking data. But it's also different from one bank to another bank. Right? There's no standard system available. So what we normally do, there's a thing called canonical data model, and there's a data model that is out there, different companies and different API models, right? And so you bring the data and map it to your internal model, and then you expose that to your customers in the standard format, right? And the customers don't need to worry about how different data is being integrated, and so that's where the integration platform is very critical. So we did all that work as part of the integration platform that we built. And there are two kinds of integration that we built. One is the API model, which is the basically call an API to pull the data from the integration partners. And also there's a push model, which is like a webhooks is another event-based models. And so when something happens in the platform, it instantaneously push the data to us. So there's a pull versus pull model. And so, we are a central data platform for our customers, and everybody's the center for their own world. But in our case, we are center for our customers, and so the data can be pushed from the integration partners, or we can pull from the companies, right? And so there are multiple integration patterns that we built based on the contract that we have with our partners, because they don't also want to, we call them at the wrong time of the day, right? Let's say they have a peak hours, and so we have to make sure that it's up our customer purpose. So there are a lot of things that are involved in bringing that data to our customers.
So, how much of a domain knowledge is needed for this? So, you started with manufacturing, you said, and now this is, while it is in the financial sector, accounting and all that, there also seems to be a lot of technology blocks or pieces that you need to understand when you're talking about this integration architecture. So, how did your own thinking evolve?
Yeah, so I never consider myself a domain expert. I consider myself a application integration expert, and there are domain specific people that can understand the data model. But what I built is the infrastructure, right? And so we extensively use this thing called integration patterns, enterprise integration patterns, where you talk about whether the event based integration or API based integration or even like a claim check pattern. There's quite a bit of those that we incorporated in our integration. So I consider myself an architect who can understand this complexity of design, complexity of the platforms. So I can bring in the data, and then I give it to the domain experts who can map that information, right? And so we have specific domain experts for banking and for inventory and other type of domains. And so they understand the data model. My job is to shift the data from one side to the other side. And so I'm not a domain expert, but I consider myself pretty much in the financial fintech industry. And I also did some healthcare in the past. Again, there's a data integration involved in that as well, like PHR when Obamacare was introduced, we had to bring in personal health history and then map it to our customers and help them in terms of creating appointments, creating bill pay, and things of those nature. So there's a bit of that also. We did that. So my thing is that I'm not again a domain expert, right? But I understand the nuances in between different kinds of data structures and different kinds of companies that are out there, because dealing with the healthcare domain is different from dealing with fintech industries, and maybe even different for inventory and ERP systems. So I only keep myself as an integration architect.
So, would things like any regulatory standards that you need to comply with, or anything related to observability or traceability and so on, does that change from domain to domain?
It's a good question. So if you think about this, we typically bring in the data depending upon the necessity for the customers. Some things needed at the time in which it's happening. Something can wait for a day. Like for example, banking domain, they post the data one day later, right? And it's okay for us to bring in the data one day later as well. So or maybe even some companies our customers that are companies, and they only close the book every week or every month end, and so they don't need the data on a daily basis. And so you pick and choose the right cadence for different data points. And so that's where the integration platform becomes more complex. It's not just always kick off one thing and then everything is done for all customers at once. Right? And so there is a bit of that nuance involved in bringing the data per customer, per data points that you're integrating with, and so on. So it is like if you're integrating with, let's say, stock market, it's better for you to bring the data instantaneously because there's millions of dollars involved in investments. While if it is the book closing or posting an inventory or making sure that you're going beyond your keeping up with your budgeting and everything else, it is not that time critical, right? It may be one day later is fine. So depending upon the data points, you want to choose the right integration pattern.
So if I understand, when you're picking the kind of integration model or the cadence that you talked about, does that impose a lot of restrictions? In which case, what is the scope to have or bring in some innovation?
Yes, and so if you think about this, let's say in the recent times, right, especially when we are solving for, let's say, mid-market companies. Mid-market companies deal with multiple kinds of data needs. The mid-market companies typically have their own sister concerns. Like they acquire new companies, or they work with third-party companies, and they work with a different department within their own companies. Right, it's not just one big company, one cohesive system. They internally, like I said, they deal with 27 different applications and platforms, and so there has to be different mental model and different ways to integrate these things, and that's where we talk about. AI being the critical aspect of things in the recent world, right? Like let's say you come into when I talk about AI, I'm not talking about just the integration pattern, but also the interaction patterns. Right now, it used to be rigid in terms of in the past. You have a menu structure, you have the buttons, and you have the different things that you can actually click and do the job. What is provided by the applications. Now it has changed a lot. Right, the expectation, especially from customer standpoint, that's where I recently started innovating. We introduced something called hyper personalization for a company or hyper personalization for a particular department. Now, let's say you come into the system and now you are interacting with the system very fluidly, right? It is now expected that I wanted to get this information as if I'm talking to my employees. Right? You are a company owner or you're a department head, and you may want to get that information very differently from how it was done in the past, even like 2 years ago than now. Right now, your expectation is that you come into the system and I want to interact with it as if I interact with my employees. Right now, so we started doing something called, you would have heard the AI agents and everything else, and I started saying that the AI agents are your digital human. Right? You come into the application and you are saying, hey, last week we met with this company and we were supposed to follow up with this company. How did that go? Right? It is not that I go into this clicking the button. Hey, this is the meeting that I had, and this is the customer that I worked with, and here's the follow up that I needed to do. It's not like a chained action. It is more now becoming fluid. Right now, to do this, now I need to integrate with the calendar. I need to integrate with what kind of a conversation that I had, maybe some notes from my Zoom calls, and then you have a integrate with the email system that followed up with some email follow ups, and what's the response from that customer, right? All these things are now changing. The integration is becoming more and more close net than how it used to be in the past.
So does this, is this something that is built on the existing data structures? Because when you said email, when you said transactions, when you said calls, whatever logs and so on, or are the underlying data structures themselves changing? I have a follow-up question based on your response.
Sounds good. So in this case, there's a bit of nuance here. So with the LLM, now it is easy for us to throw the natural language that you had with the email systems or you had with your Zoom calls, and then take the in transcripts and then understand using LLMs, and then you respond to the conversation. based on it, right? You can actually follow up with it. Right? LLM can also provide you what should be your responses. And here are the three things that you can utilize and do these things. But from the LLM can perform well if you have a standard structure as well. So it's not that while it can work with fuzzy language, it is always helpful to have a structured conversation at the back end, right? And so you can have the interaction from the experience perspective. It can still be very casual, very fluid, but internally you can have a structured conversation so that LLM will not hallucinate. And it has got a specific way to you know understand what you're saying, and then it will give you a better answer as opposed to being fuzzy and being loose from the front end perspective.
So, in a way, we are trying to make sense of what earlier used to be called unstructured data or bridging the divide between structured and unstructured data. Now, for all this, to provide the context or, like you said, whether it is the skills or giving it the guardrails, operating within which to reduce the hallucination, how long does it take for a domain person to articulate those kind of boundaries?
I think it has become much more easier than the past in my learnings, right? So you can provide a few examples how LLM can perform, right? And so LLMs are good at identifying the patterns, right? It doesn't need to be strict data structure as it used to be, but still it helps to have a data structure, and you have them constructed in a way that, hey, here is what customer is asking, so you can use LLM to create a plan, right? And then the plan, based on the plan, now you can actually have the prompt that will help you to say, here are the few examples by which you can actually operate, right? And here are the examples by which you can actually give me outputs, right? You can provide the guardrail and help the LLM to work based on set of constraints as opposed to keeping them loose. Because let's say the customer is saying something about the call that happened with this customer, but then the interpretation of LLM could take it to a different direction. Right? You don't want to have that going to a different direction. So you need to bring it to a level there. Hey, here are the things that we are talking about right now, and how do you provide constrained answers? LLMs are getting better day by day. It used to be not so good in the past. Now it has had all the reasoning aspect being built, right? And so based on the examples and based on the things that you provide to them, it now operates much better. So it's still, you need to have a little bit of the data structures so that it works in a cohesive manner, because LLMs are built for vast knowledge, right? And there are so much of information out there. But then you are building for a manufacturing or building for a mid-market company, especially let's say you are building some specific solution for a specific company, you want to bring that conversation closer to it. Right? And so it may be sales conversation, it may be manufacturing conversation, it may be production conversation, right? And so you want to bring it to that thing that is relevant to that company, and that's where the hyper personalization come into play.
So with so many changes happening, or pretty much every tool or a new model keeps coming up almost on a daily basis or a weekly basis, what is your thought on how do you define innovation in this kind of a rapidly changing environment?
So this is something that we were taught from our founder, Scott Cook. He taught us something called customer-driven innovation, and we learned something called technology-driven innovation. So there are two aspects to it. They are very hand in hand. They go closer to each other. Customer-driven innovation is to understand the customer problem, customer pain point, and typically the problems are very common in nature, but they are very specific to the business and very specific to their value system that they built in the company. They are very specific to the customer that they're dealing with, right? And so you want to understand the pain point that they could go through, right? From there, now say, hey, here is my solution that is there, that probably fit in what we built, or understand their problem and reinvent their way that you solve the problem. So in the past, you built a shrink wrap software and it is suitable for everybody, or you have to make customers change to adapt to your solution. And that is today's world. It is not acceptable in my observation. right? Because customers are saying, hey, I'm unique in a way that I operate my business. I have my own problems. Don't make me work with your solution. Give me a solution that fits for me, right? And that's what we learned. So in fact, we were trying to, here's a technology-driven innovation come into play. The technology-driven innovation, we said, hey, LLMs are great, right? Now we can actually create a specific plan for this business, and we can create the say again when I say talk about plan, it's the LLM works in that manner, right? So it's like a GPS, and you give a direction, it goes and finds out the path for you, and within it, it finds a path, two or three different paths, and one says faster, one says less tolls that you need to pay, another one says, hey, it's a longer route for you, right? So you pick a path and you go through that. But let's say you missed a exit, right? It recalculates. Right? That's kind of the analogy for your planning, right? And so, given a situation, now LLM can create a plan for you, and you execute based on the tools that you have that are available with your within your system. Right now, you take that same thing. Now, how do I actually make it more personalized solution for this customer? So we were trying to innovate on something called uh, something called scaffolding AI. So in this case, what we did was we took a specific business processes that the company has and all the vocabulary, all the things that they use in their system. You create a specification out of it. Right? We used to have call it as a PRD, project requirement definition, and you take that type of specification and you create a custom model for this company. It could even be custom models for that company, right? And so now, how do you do that? We took a small language model, like a 7 billion parameter or 70 billion parameter models, as opposed to 3 trillion, 2 trillion parameter model that are there out there. And so we took a small language model and we fine tuned using reinforcement learning, right? And so now that model specifically built for this company. Now there's an operational problem because of this, right? We have 7 million different customers that are there. We can't build 7 million language models.
Yeah.
Right. And so the scale becomes much larger. And so now we needed to pick a right balance between you can just live with the standard open source or open language models and you build specific plans for the company. And there are certain things that are very unique to that business. And you solve that unique needs using the small language models. And so we pick and choose the proper, the technique for different companies. This became a huge strategy for the company last year. Right? And so this is an amazing transformation, the way that you are thinking about this problem completely differently from how you used to think about this in the past.
Yeah, wonderful. And it's very interesting that you mentioned GPS because there is one, currently you can call it as a stealth project that I'm working on, trying to build this kind of a personalized navigation for both personal or team level transformations, trying to use the experience from coaching, so many organizations and individuals. We'll talk about it later. I definitely want to bounce off a few ideas. But here, one thing was, when you talk about innovation, or you also referred to all the 20 plus patents that you have, how do you find something that is, let's say, patentable? So maybe a little bit of brief on software patents for the benefit of our listeners who may not be all familiar with patents in the software world.
100%. So this is something that I learned from way back from one of my mentors in my company. So he taught me something like this. So there are problems that exist in the world, right? And so the problems are not patentable, but the solutions are. So if you think about this, the way that analogy that he gave me was the iron as an element exists in the earth. Now you have a method today to extract iron out of the earth elements by doing 10-step process. Okay, and you have a patent for it. But let's say you are now inventing something that changes that 10-step process to, let's say, a 3-step process. Okay, now you invented a new method than the previous method.
Yes.
but the problem is still the same, separating iron from the earth, right? But then the process is different. Now, same thing applicable in software patents. Now, how do you go and invent something like this? When I talk about this particular, the hyper-personalized process, business processes, right? The business processes are the same thing for most of the companies. I want to do one thing to another thing, and that process, let's say that takes about 10 different steps in the process. But in introducing new method into this thing, now you have eliminated few things and then you change few other things. Now that can be patentable. So again, there's a software patent that are, let's say, can I do, finding a square root? Can I go patent it? No, it cannot. And can you do, hey, I have this UI, and in the UI, I have this button here with a blue color button. In another application, I have a purple color button. Can I patent that? No, you cannot. And so there's a way, there's a design pattern, and there's also a functional or the method. We call it as a method, of an execution, so that you can patent. So how do you look at it and it is a patentable? Obviously, in our company, we had the luxury of having patent counsels, and they are lawyers who are technologists. And so they understand the attorney level of details. At the same time, they understand the technology nuances. And they say, hey, code generation, oh, it's done and dusted, so you cannot go patent it, for example, right? And but at the same time, when they talk about this small language model to a big language model, and how do you the shift from orchestrate from the bigger language model, but then the combination of small language model and the bigger language model, how do you make that process working? That is patentable. In fact, I have a patent applied for it. So,
nice.
So that's kind of how you think about the patentability. It's a fine line between this way or that way, and so and lawyers help you to define, should this be wider patent or should be this narrow thing, right? And I learned something like, how do you swing in the park in a swing can be patented apparently. So so the hanging swing. So how it should keep it in a way that it is not making noise, it's actually swinging fluidly. So that's patentable apparently. So you can imagine how these things are very fine lined.
So how does this apply in a startup context? Because now today you find a lot of startups, at least in the technology space, where you live and where I live in Bangalore also. So is patenting first advisable, and will it be affordable for them?
I contemplate a lot on this myself. In my learning, Shiv, is that it is big time advisable to protect your IP.
Mhm.
And especially from even the VCs or venture capitalists who are investing in it, they like to have two things. Are you innovating, and do you have business plan and the execution behind it, right? So innovation, the protecting IP is a critical thing to say, hey, here I have a 10 software patent or 10 patents for my product and services. And that helps them to look at your solution differently than the competitors out there. And then obviously VCs are looking for your business and the execution behind it. We know that ideas are easy, but executions are tough. Like, can you execute in a way that it is continuously improving and it is adapting to the changes that you have? And that itself is an innovation, right? Let's say you build something that is so rigid, you can't change it. It's a problem, right? And so going back to your question, having a patent is a thing that you should look at it. Is it expensive? Yes, it is expensive. Right? Per patent, at least you need to spend about $10,000-$15,000, and then you follow through it. And patents are not easily attainable, because it takes about 2 to 4 years, depending upon how you apply and when you get the patent. But at least you can say it's patent pending, right? And so I would say take a good look at it and protect the IP, and have that in your back pocket from the VC's perspective.
Working in a commercial organization or an organization which is a for-profit kind of business, there will be pressures on deadlines, on dates when something has to be done. So how does your innovation mindset or innovation engine work
Yeah, it's I'm smiling because it is a constant problem. It is a constant pressure that you have in the industry today. It has been like this for quite some time, right? In typically in the past, you built this vast architecture, right? And that architecture takes about 3 years to put out entirely to realize what you
Mm.
envision to the final state, right? And so, but can you wait for 3 years to bring it to the customer's hand?
Mm.
No, we cannot. And so, in the even like 5 6 years ago, we used to have quarterly planning,
Mm.
right? And so you have a target. Here is where I need to go, and then to build a target, you work backwards and say, quarter one, I'm going to do this, right? And the quarter one, I'm going to do this, but then it is not just sitting in the back end, right? After becoming the SaaS becoming the primary way of delivering the software, it has become a little bit easier. So you deliver the software in the first quarter, and now customers are how they are actually using it. So we used to do it in a two different ways. One, uh, let's say there's an existing feature that you're reinventing and doing something different. So we don't want to disrupt how the customers are using the existing feature, right? And so we put a feature flag, and then we do two things. One is something called shadow mode, right? You run it the original method, then you have the new method. Run the new method in the beginner scenes, so
Mm.
that you can collect the data as a software builders, and
Mhm.
we understand how the new thing is
Yeah.
working
Okay.
well or not, right? And so we do that one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, not other way. The another ways to do this. You put a feature flag and say 5% of the customers who are going to be experiencing the new method, right?
Mm.
The A/B testing method,
Mm.
and as we understand from the customer how they are using this new method, and if this is working well, not working well, and you collect the data and you continue to reiterate it so that you are improving it, so that you are envision that hey, here's what I envision, and that you cannot succeed with the rigid mindset. Right
Mm.
now, you continuously improve based on the customer usages.
Mhm.
Now it is even more faster, right? The cycle time is reduced even further, right? And so with recently, I'm working on a project using Cloud Code, right? I was able to put out a whole prototype within 1 week of time, completely working prototype.
Okay.
Now I'm able to go show it to my potential customers.
Mm.
Again, I'm not waiting for 1 quarter to
Yeah.
make this happen, right? And it's in fact it's working prototype. In even I would even call it as an MVP,
Mm.
right? I actually went to talk to two different customers already, our potential customers, and I got a feedback. That is
Mm.
more important, right? Now, whether they are taking the product or using it is not quite there yet, but I
Mm.
got the feedback from them saying that, hey, this might be a useful thing for me, or this is not quite useful, right? And I also will connect with you to somebody else, right? And so it is so interesting for me to market this faster, right? And so I used to be a perfectionist, right? And without making the whole perfect product ready, I will not take it to the customer. Now it is slightly different, but then there is a risk involved in it, right? They say if it is a high compliance product, right, you don't want to, half baked item and then throw it to the customer and jeopardize their data or jeopardize their customer reputation, right? And so you need to be cognizant of what is that you can go test, what is that should be much more complex and much more perfect. And so you can balance between those two things and then innovate accordingly, right? And so this is where the cycle time shrunk a lot
Mm.
from how it used to be. From hey, I'm building this 3 year product, and then once it is there, then throwing a discount there, to now 1 week, and I can go validate with customers.
So how does this change or impact the traditional way of working? There is a product manager or a product management function, there's an architecture function, there's an engineering function. Of course, there's the sales, post sales, and all that.
Yeah, it blurred the line a lot, right? And if I'm a product manager, if I'm willing to take some risk, right? And so I think this is where the evolution happens, right?
Mm.
Let's say I'm a product manager. I'm not waiting for my engineer to come and give me this perfect solution. right? I can actually put out a prototype just like that and then go validate with my customer. I'm an engineer. I'm not waiting for my product manager to approve my product, right? But I can actually invent this product completely different from how a product manager would be envision it, right? Because now that's where I'm saying it's a blurred line, right? It's becoming much more easier and much more collaborative than ever before. In the past, I would say what my product manager used to do, they are doing this customer driven innovation. So therefore, they are going to talk to tens and hundreds of customers before they can actually create the product spec. It's no more the case. So now, in fact, what we did last, 2 years ago, in fact, what I did was that I created a synthetic customers. I created synthetic customers using LLM. I gave an LLM, you are my customer, you use your persona, here's my product that I'm looking for, how do you use this? Right? And now I can take 10 customers, I can talk to 10 customers, I can create hundreds of synthetic customers, right? I don't need to wait for, hundreds more customers to recruit them, sit with them, correct them, and all that thing, right? You can still do that with the 10 customers, but then you can mimic with hundreds of customers. And so now that's where the whole life cycle is now shrinking. In fact, I'm starting to use LLM a lot in this type of things. I asked LLM to write the PRD for it. I asked LLM to write the architecture specification for this, right? But then I'm educating LLM the way that I want to get this done, right? Your critical mind is still with you, right? How you think about this, how you come up with the product solution, and LLM also can enrich it, but the LLM itself cannot do this for you. You still have to do it, but then you are feeding that thing and leveraging LLM to your fullest potential.
So when you do that, how have your results been so far with synthetic customers?
It's really good actually. Especially because I'm having 10 customers as a sample, and I'm feeding that sample as one of the inputs into this. At the same time, I don't want to bias it, right? And so I have different kinds of prompts for me to experiment in, right? And so I just give the specific roles, and I'm giving them open-ended. Here's my product that I'm trying to build, and how would you use it? So it comes back with the critical, question and answers for me, right? It actually enriches my thinking as well, right? And so it is actually very useful to do something like this, right? And so if you are researching on some customers base, I would go do this first before even acquiring or hiring customers, right? And so for me, the results are pretty positive.
Good. Yeah, it's also quite interesting to see how you said you also started using LLMs and AI. So that brings me to one of my favorite questions that I want to ask pretty much all the guests is related to some career advice for two segments of people: those who are considering entering IT now, and the second segment are those people who you may say are facing their mid-career crisis. I've been doing all these things. There seems to be so much happening around AI, around whatever else. What should I be looking at, or what should I do? Do you have any thoughts for them?
Yeah, 100%. So, like I said, I started from 4MB RAM to FoxPro to now AI engineering, and never stop learning is my one of the key leadership principles. The never stop learning is not a easy thing, right? Change is a hard thing, but change happens every day, right? And because I myself kept up to date based on the evolution, but not everybody wants to do that, right? They are comfortable dealing with one thing and they want to keep it that way. But then with the industry changing and the customers' expectations changing, you cannot say, hey, I am this way, I will want to do this product, I will want to solve this problem this way, right? You have to adhere to the new way of dealing with this, right? It used to be just the computer in the past, right? Now there are so many different input devices available for you, right? And therefore, you have to continue to evolve yourself. That is for the mid-career people advice. So you have to continuously evolve yourself, okay, no matter what. And you have to think differently. How can I leverage this idea for that problem, and so on, right? And so you have to constantly think about this. So no more just hey, I know this, I will do this for entire career. That's not going to be feasible at all. If I'm entering a new into the industry now, your way of dealing with this completely the industry is different. So I had an interesting conversation with one of my colleagues in the past. He used to sweat by saying, if these new career people, they don't understand how these fundamentals work.
Hmm.
Right? The fundamentals, like when we used to deal with this, we used to write for programs in C++. I know some of my colleagues in the past, they used to debug using registers. No more needed anymore, right? And so the fundamentals for these people are kind of completely different. Do they need do they need to understand the basics? Yes, they do understand the basics. For example, how do I post a service? How do I make this thing available for my customers? Especially now going forward, the debugging a particular problem is going to be much more harder because the systems are so many distributed, and there are so many things that are happening from different things. LLM planning might be taking you to a different direction, and so you need to understand those foundations of how do I identify a problem, how do I troubleshoot an issue. Those are important thing. But then if you're entering into the career, you are going to be dealing with completely different. Let's say in even like 5 years from down the line from here, I don't even know whether people need to know there's a thing called C++. There's a thing called assembly language, right? They may not even deal with, for example, cloud solutions. They may be dealing with space solutions. Right now, how do you think about those things differently? And before I go there, one more thing is that people are afraid of AI these days, right? And so I would say embrace them, right? And don't put yourself in the cocoon saying that, oh, LLMs are taking away my jobs. No, LLMs are creating a different kind of an opportunity for you right now. Right? Look for those kind of opportunities and leverage LLMs to solve those problems. Right? And so it is creating a new kind of economy, new kind of way to deal with things. Right? Don't just stick to the simple menu options and the traditional way of dealing with the applications. You have to think about differently now, right? And so coming back to summarizing it, if you're mid-career, never stop learning, continue to evolve. If you're new to the industry, you have an exciting world out there. Embrace this new way of dealing with this problem. You might have studied something differently in your college. From there to now, it's different. So embrace this new way of dealing with this. So
Yeah, wonderful. I think some of these topics can go on for a long time, but we do have a constraint of time. But one question which I have to ask you now is that being in this world of rapidly changing with so many changes, you says continuous learning, everything else, do you have any personal practices that you would like to share that help you stay grounded and cheerful?
So yeah, I'm a person who wants to challenge myself. I don't want to be sitting in a comfort zone, right? And if I start to feel that I'm in a comfort zone, I said, oh no, no, say there's something not doing. I'm not doing things right, and so I put myself out there. I challenge myself. I don't afraid of things coming at me. Right? In fact, I pull myself into a problem myself, and then I that may cause problems for us, people surrounding me. But then that's the way that I can go learn myself. So challenge yourself. Don't sit in a comfort zone. So that's my last word of wisdom.
But are there any practices that help you do that?
Yes.
How
So
do you
yeah,
understand, realize that you're getting too much into your comfort zone?
yeah. That's a good reminder for your question. So uh, one, I try to use these tools and the models that are available on a daily basis. And if I'm not able to do it because I deal with many different things, and my engineers are doing it, I don't hesitate to ask them.
Hmm.
And hey, how did you approach this problem? I know that we set up the problem, but how did you approach this? And how did you actually improve this from? It took us to do 100 hours of work. Now you're doing it in 2 hours of the same thing. Now, how did you approach this? right? And so I don't afraid to ask people how they are doing this. So I learn from them, and I go practice that later. One, I try to learn myself using some of these tools. At the same time, I leverage people that are around me.
Wonderful, Elangovan. On that note, thanks a lot for coming on the show and sharing your story. I'm sure I have a lot more questions that I will follow up, and let's see how it goes.
Yeah, thank you, Shiv. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm happy to share more.
All the best for whatever you choose to do now that are
Yeah,
explore new areas.
yeah, thank you, Shiv.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.